Welcome to the St. Louis Syndicate. I'm Nate Blackston. This is Brandon Lewis, and we're here to talk about college football. Week 5 of college football is upon us, Brandon, and the polls have made very minimal adjustments. What are your thoughts?
It's finally getting awesome. We got some teams taking some losses and actually having some significant wins. Looking at you, Tennessee, uh, going dealing with Oklahoma, and we don't have to worry about just whether Texas is going to beat whatever directional school from Wyoming and whether they're going to beat them by 40 or not.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're getting to the exciting part.
Yeah, everybody's gonna, this is where the SEC schools start beating up on each other. We start having a little bit of problem where people start thinking Big Ten schools are better than they really are because they're not beating up on each other as much. It's like Ohio State kicking the can down the street,
That's for sure.
and Oregon wants to play the Ohio State game and try to do that. I know that you're a big fan of Oregon's path forward. I'm being facetious. Penn State's doing the
I just
same
need them to
thing.
lose a couple of games.
Yeah, just it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen at some point. But we got a big one this week with Georgia and Alabama, a couple SEC schools. Really been banging heads for quite a while together now. Um, I don't know how serious the impact this will actually have on the 12. Matter of fact, we could probably say none. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think if we fit to a reasonable difference in scores, then it's not impactful. Whoever wins, if they win by, say, five or less, this is basically a wash. But if we go in there and somebody gives the other team a whooping, then we're going to see the other team drop down a little bit, especially if it's Georgia that takes the whooping right after barely surviving Kentucky. So, I'm looking at Alabama this week. I think they're going to be up for this game, and it'll be down the road when they take their first loss. But that's just kind of just a feeling I've got.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually agree completely with that sentiment. Not necessarily that Alabama's going to win this game, but if Georgia loses, I can see Georgia taking a more significant fall. If Alabama loses, they may fall to 5, 6.
Sure. Yeah.
If Georgia falls, they may fall to 6, 7, because that's a kind of reactive, like you said, off the Kentucky game. So
Yeah.
interesting to see how that plays out. Two of the best teams in the country. We got a great matchup this week. It's awesome to see. Another fantastic one, actually, in the Big Ten. Illinois, who has had zero relevance in the national scene the last several dozen years, now is running into a Penn State team who is undefeated. Two undefeateds in the Big Ten, and really, I think this is way more than Illinois can handle. As you mentioned, our brethren across the river is
Yeah.
going to show up and do their best, but Penn State's pretty loaded this year.
They are, but 18 is a ton, right? You start getting outside of that 16, 17 range, and I'm definitely going to be looking to Illinois to cover. Maybe they get blown out. Maybe they're just not ready for prime time yet. But this is the kind of game that if you're going to stay in that back half of the 25, you got to stay really close here.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point. 7:30 Eastern at Happy Valley. Who knows? Will it be a whiteout? My God, Illinois, their
It's,
heads are going to shake for the first quarter.
yeah, without a doubt. They just got to play mistake-free football.
Yeah, they're going to have to. Um, Penn State is a team that is probably trying to show some dominance here, though, because as we talked earlier, it's going to be really critical as we start narrowing down into the 12 who that 5, 6, 7, and 8 teams are. Because Penn State, while they want to be in 9, 10, 11, and 12 is fine, going to Happy Valley to play in the first round of the playoffs, on a primetime game will be a challenge for anybody. So
Yeah.
the jockeying's going to begin, and we see with the loss or the win Missouri had against Vanderbilt was poor, and it dropped them 4 spots. Penn State may put a whooping on Illinois just to prove a point.
They surely are going to try. I mean, I think, with expanding this to 12 teams, I think every team is going to push for margin. Above and beyond just, the famous historical, your team wants to cover because you have your boosters and they're putting money on the game and all that sort of, the difference when you're comparing to the NFL where teams just want to win and get out the door. But these guys, you're exactly right. That 5, 6, 7, 8 is going to be key for these teams that can't get into the top four. And if Penn State can put it on them, they're going to. So we're going to know when we get to the end of this game whether Illinois is for real a top 25 team or if they have just had a nice run here.
Yeah. I'm going to go with had a nice run here. That's my guess. Just my guess. But hey, we're going to see. It'll be fun to watch. The
Oh,
last one,
yeah.
you're probably like, hey, Nate, why did you put Maryland, Indiana on this? It's a noon game. It's a Big Ten kind of mishmush showdown. What are we doing here? And honestly, I just wanted to bring up the point and see what your thoughts were around Indiana this year. They're playing some really good ball. First year coach Kurt Signetti from James Madison. Signetti had an 11-1 record last year at James Madison, and he's known for just running up scores. And the first few weeks of the season, Indiana has just been mowing people over and running up scores. That 7 feels light to me. What are your thoughts? And have you thought about Indiana at all?
I haven't done a lot of thinking about Indiana. I think I watched one of their games. I don't know that I've seen the other ones. I always have this like soft spot for Maryland because of Van Pelt. So, I watch a little bit of their games, but the 7 does seem low for a team with that pedigree. And what, from my history, watching that game, they just had a smoothness of the offense seemed to know what they were trying to do on every play. They weren't getting lost. They weren't just throwing away plays. So I think if it was me, especially at 7, I'd lay the 7.
Yeah.
Um, depending on where it moves the rest of the week. But if I could get a push at 7, then you know, I'll take the more senior coach and let him go out there and play call.
Yeah. No, I love that. Just to give you a little more context, we've got our over under at 53. You've got a spread of 7. And I bounced over to covers, where I like to get some information from. And in week 1 against FIU, they won 31-7. In week 2 against WIU, they won 77-3. They beat UCLA the following week 42-13, and they beat Charlotte the next week 52-14. The over under feels like potentially in danger here because Indiana's dropping 40 plus on everybody. Maybe it's a 6 point game, but if that's the case, then Maryland is scoring a lot and the over is in play.
That feels very safe.
So a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
like
fun
I like that
research there.
53 for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Just knowing what the scores have been, so that's why I wanted to bring this game up. It just seems like this coach Signetti's trying to prove a point. It seems he's not scared to put the pedal to the metal, and his teams are responding.
Yeah, I think that's a fair take. Yeah, I'm definitely looking at that over. That's a
One
good
last
call.
one last bit of information for the Guts community. Guts is continuing on. I'm still alive in Guts. Wanted to take a quick look at some of the teams out there. We talked about a few of the games. Others that might be interesting to take a look at would be the Texas A&M and Arkansas game with A&M at a -4. We're interested in, is Boise State at 7.5 the right play against Washington State? The Kansas teams, both Kansas and Kansas State, are favorites, short favorites. Kansas by 1.5 over TCU, and Kansas State by 4.5 over Oklahoma. I
I'm done
personally am
with the
not worried about any
Kansas
of those.
teams.
What's
Yeah.
that? Yeah, I'll stay away
I
from
said I'm
Kansas.
done with the Kansas teams.
Yeah.
That's how I left this pool. The hands of my least favorite basketball team.
Yeah, Kansas put it to Brandon early. I think I'm looking at Notre Dame potentially with Louisville coming to town. I'd like to think that Notre Dame still thinks they're in contention to get into the 12, and if that's the case, they're gonna have to do something with Louisville. I do understand that Louisville is ranked higher than them right now, but not by much. I think that this is where Notre Dame kind of reestablishes itself against a top 25 opponent and tries to get back on the map.
That makes a ton of sense. I love the home teams with the short lines, staying right in that 4 to 7 range because the home crowd just means so much in college.
It
Like
does.
it messes up the spreads, and I think that, more than any other sport, they aren't properly taken into account.
Nah, that makes good sense. Not like the NFL where it used to be 3 points. Now it's what 1.5 maybe.
Yeah, yeah, unless you figure out a way to bounce sound around like Minnesota does.
Yeah. Hey, whatever works. Hey, good luck on your picks, guys. College football. I'm Nate. He's Brandon. Good luck with your picks.
Good luck.